Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to October Monthly Mingle. It's so nice to see all of you here. Most of you are new as well, so it's good to get to know you. So I think someone was mentioning about the question of how to manage remote team, and I think this question is more pertinent again than ever again, because we just went back into a work from home as default option. So it'll be interesting to hear what all of you think about it. And it has also been, I think more than 1.5 years where remote working has become quite common. It'd be great to also share, things that have worked for you, for your team. Yeah, so I think it's super interesting. I think Arjun, you were the one who brought it up, right? Why do you come up with this question? What was bothering you?
Yeah, so we just expanded our team in the last couple of months, and about half our team is in India, a mix of engineers and designers. So especially when they first joined, there was quite a bit of a challenge of both onboarding them and getting them to feel like part of the team, like not just do the task that they're tasked to do, but like just clarify things quickly. We also have a small team here, and in the team here on-prem, it's quite easy to just talk to each other and get up to speed. So that's why I was thinking, like, how do we get the people in India to feel as part of Betafy as the team in Singapore?
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to comment about this?
I'm going through the same thing. Right. So actually by default, I already have Bubblebox. We already have Singapore and Malaysia office. Malaysia office has been around for the last 10 years. So I know the guys there, and I spend time there. I almost spent half the time there in the beginning to set up the office and all these things. So it's come to a point where Singapore and Malaysia office, I send a text and things get done. Right. I mean, but the issue here is last year we started, or end of 2019, we started a team in Vietnam, and then of course COVID happened. So this is still a continuous. I mean, it's a challenge. It came to a point where I think end of 2020, I decided that we just couldn't go on. I just released the entire team. It was something that was almost unmanageable, because I think number one, everybody is still in 2020. You got to remember, everybody is trying to struggle. We're struggling with COVID, right? Not only from the business side, we have to pivot. We had to so many things on hand, and yet we have to have a new team, but they have never met. So that was really difficult. And it came to a point, like I said, end of 2020, I said we can't go on like that, and we decided to let the entire team go. So this year, 2021, we're rebuilding the team again. We learned a couple of lessons, right, and try not to make the same mistakes. So let's put it this way. I think culture-wise is going to. I think right now, if you ask me, culture is going to be difficult, because look, you're not there, right? It's just going to be difficult, right? So I think right, we decided that we should just, as best as we can, manage by tasks, manage by objectives, manage by to cut into pieces. Whereas for culture, as much as we can say that this is the things that we do, this is what, but I think beyond that is really difficult to have a human relationship. You know what I mean, right? So yeah, so that was difficult. Yeah, but I thought we're doing this year much better, right? I mean, we've got a new team, and in fact, I just hired a new one. so that's the reason why I was, I know exactly how you feel. I was just preparing a sort of a deck just to make sure I update that deck. So when the guy comes in on board, I can introduce the company, as it is and whatnot. And follow him, there will be another bunch of other guys as well. So that's the reason why I reacted to your right. Yeah, but I think or at least what I feel right now is difficult to have that culture. So I think at best we manage by objectives, we manage by tasks, and keep a close watch, right? I think that's in a certain sense, that's the best we can do.
Yeah, I think I experienced that as well when I was running the Makan for Hope festival, and it's even harder because I'm not paying them, because it's a volunteer team, and I maybe correct me if I'm wrong, during this remote working period, right, I feel like the leader is we find the most tiring, because it's like how it's going to work is everybody is coming to you, right, instead of And you have to spend that time, whether it's on Zoom or, I don't know, on a phone call with them. And that is what little there is to the culture that you are creating. And then secondly, you mentioned about managed by task, by project, and I really resonate with that because really you have to be very, I guess, specific about what needs to be done, because people are not in the same room anymore, right? They don't get like they don't understand, okay, what is being worked on unless somebody communicated on your Slack or on your Discord. Yeah, so it's challenging. Anyway, yeah.
Just to share also, I think that the last thing you said about everyone coming to the founders was the main problem. So every small thing they go to me or my co-founder, which is not something we want to encourage. We want the designers and engineers to work together. So we tried to play like virtual games every Friday. They were okay, but the session was fun, and then next week led to nothing. So what we are trying now, and just the thing we did this week, is a company hackathon. So we divided into 2 teams and made them compete in like one day. That seemed to work. I mean, whether it leads to collaboration during the week is still to be seen, but that's just something we try to experiment with.
Yeah, I think this reminds me of having shared experience, right? Because if you're all in the same office, you can go for lunch together, you can gossip, whatever. So you are creating that shared experience and bonding. Yeah. So yeah, the hackathon is an interesting idea.
I actually did that, but it was a extended hackathon. As in, we did it for a week, right? We gave them a task and we come up with something within a week, and we drop everything, we drop all work, right? And just play for that week. And the outcome wasn't important actually. Well, actually, there's something did come out of it, right? But I think personally, when we started it, right, outcome wasn't important. There was more of trying to get everybody together and have a laugh. That sort of thing, you know what I mean, right? So the laughing part, I think, is important.
And listen, I'd be interested to hear from you, given your experience and what you're working on.
Well, it's interesting because I have two perspectives on it. Because when I was running my last company, I ran a consortium for 10 years for companies that were interested in managing long distance. So it's really interesting to me now in a different industry and managing an organization where most people that I now employ, I've never met them face to face. So I personally think that there's a huge amount of space that we can use to create culture, and distance doesn't define who we are. So I know, like in my organization, we have a set of principles we call people first. And if anyone wants it, I'll share it with you. But it's about fair. So it's FIRST. So it's about fair. We're fair to all our stakeholders, and we want them to feel that we're fair. We are inclusive. We build resilience. We protect psychological safety, and then we build trust. And lots of research shows that trust is one of the hardest things to build in a distributed environment. But one of the things that creates trust is consistency, communication. I think that the biggest challenge is that sometimes we give up on because we're like, oh, it's so hard. But what we don't do is build routines that allow us to engage and interact in different ways. Like, I mean, you can celebrate people's birthdays, you can have pop-up meetings. If you're in multiple time zones, you just get norms where people report, when are they working versus when are they not to be disturbed. So yeah, I think it's really much more painful to leaders. And I think in like technology, generally, I think particularly people with technical backgrounds are often not the strongest people managers. And so it's like, it makes everything worse. It makes it so much harder. But actually, in case it makes you feel any better, the research shows that if you have a distributed team and it's well managed, it's like diverse because you're over different countries and things like that. It actually outperforms a team that's same. So maybe that makes you feel better. But I mean, as a leader myself, it's easy for me to say, oh, here's what the research says, and but I also know that it's difficult. So I don't want to pretend that I think it's easy, but I think you have to work a lot at it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing the first framework. I think it is useful. And you brought up the concept of psychological safety and trust. Yeah, so it's very fundamental, but it's so difficult to create the environment, and definitely requires consistency, requires really the values and principles to be consistent, to like repeated, to your employees. Routines as well, you mentioned, being able to communicate their values through the routines that you have, so that people get it over time. So I need to persist. And I want to mention that it's interesting you bring up as well that diverse team, distributed teams work well. And this is also what I observe for blockchain, in the blockchain world. Like in the blockchain world, normally it's a very small core team, and like maybe a team of 7, and then they actually work with like researchers, programmers and all that, and they just give a specific task and they compensate them with like tokens and all that. So I always feel like, if it can be done in blockchain, then how can it be replicated in a non-blockchain world? And sometimes I was thinking maybe then perhaps you can't have, maybe some people that you hire had to be freelancers, so they're very task driven. So things like that. So since I mentioned about blockchain, I want to invite Rahul to share what you think about remote working and any good practices, any things that you had observed.
Okay, so before going into the blockchain, previously I was working as an employee for another company. So I myself as an employee, and I was recruited as a remote fashion. I have not met anybody in the company. Like I went in, I took my card and everything, and the next day I took the laptop and started working. So when they talk, it was very difficult for me to visualize what kind of personality they are when they use certain words. Is it like they are serious or anything? I didn't know. So I will say from that perspective, it is really tough. Right? There are different phases how people go remote. Right? Initially during the COVID time, everybody was working together, like 1 year, 2 year, and they all become a remote team. Right? So they know each other anyway already. So it's basically they are trying to work remote. Like when I was recruited new to this, it was really challenging for me. So what we found out during those time is to communicate more. So over communication is one thing that can help, and also and also like what others are saying, also to have communication or meetings that are not relevant to the work that we are doing, socializing and things like that. So later, after 3 or 4 months, I got on the physical meeting, and it was okay. So it was a much bigger relief for me. I came to know a lot of colleagues that I'm working with, my bosses who are there, and things like that. So going on to the blockchain world, right? So for me also, like it is pretty new. I'm not an expert, or I'm not contributing in that kind of a fashion, getting a token or anything, contributing to the open source. But I also know that is how it is working. So in the blockchain world, the organization itself, it's a decentralized organization. So there are big projects, like any big project, which are multi-million-dollar project, like 100 million, 200, 500 million project, right? So even that project, even the company by itself doesn't have a structure like CEO or like this kind of people. It's called decentralized autonomous organization, DAO. So those people are like it's kind of a governance. Democracy. People with who has the token, it's like a share. They will propose a proposal, and a lot of other people will vote for it. And if there is enough vote, then the fund will be allocated for that, and that will be given like a grant. And there is another party who will come and execute that. And there is a process of how these token holders will come and evaluate those people, whether they have the track record of delivering this kind of things. So it's like actually you don't even know there is a human being like that exists behind that, but it's all working seamlessly. So that is one of the futuristic model that is already existing. People are able to do it. So maybe the people are highly motivated and incentive is there. So a lot of dynamism works in the blockchain world. So it's basically an incentive-based working environment there. And also it kinds of gives you the feeling of equality, and there is certain things, transparency. So a lot of things are there in the blockchain world when we go and interact. Even in the traditional organization, I will think like if you can bring some of the parameters like this, the equality, basically what you're saying, the culture and all these things and transparency, because normally when I work for traditional companies, the biggest problem is the information flow, right? Our top knows more, and then when it goes down, people don't know, right, the decisions and everything. So that is also another problem, like the decentralized organizations where everything is open, nobody, it's all communicated in the channels and very less things goes one-on-one and things like that. So this is my understanding on how the DAOs are working. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. I think you mentioned about the community that is built up around, let's say, a certain ecosystem, right? And then they are able to board. There's a governance system and all that. Yeah, I think it's really cool. Like what is being done in blockchain. Although I think maybe in the other parts of the world, maybe not all products is able to do this. Maybe like B2C or like platform businesses, software. Says is possible. Yeah, so it's interesting to see how this can happen for the other type of products. Yeah. Anyway, Gerald, you have your hands up. You want to share?
Yeah. Wanted to revisit the question that Arjun had earlier. I think one thing that worked really well for my nonprofit is that whenever I work with someone, and if you want to expand the team, I get them to hire their own team. So then the people under them will report to them naturally versus me. So like as a founder, you just empower your staff to have like at least the first round, second round interview, and then you just do like the final check. So I think that really helps with like elevating the workload on everyone just coming to you to ask all these questions. Second, other thing is more like a side point. I don't think we managed to touch about it. Is there have been studies by like top tech companies in Silicon Valley saying like when part of the team is like in person and part of the team is remote, the general best practice is to have just everyone log in remotely. Because otherwise, like the people that are remote will feel like a second class kind of thing. So just something to take note of. Like even if you're in the same room, everybody has to just use their laptop and log in remotely. I don't know. Yeah, it's like counterintuitive, but just
I agree with that. Yeah, so that everybody have like the same level of experience in a way. I want to comment about.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to make one comment because I like the comment that Gerald was making about the delegating and empowering people to. I think it's also really important that you have a shared view about what you're selecting for, because that's another. I think that's a real problem. If you don't have that, then you end up with people hiring people like them.
Yeah, I was going to point out about diversity. So thanks for saying that. And then the second thing that I also want to share is, okay, when I was organizing Makan Festival, I felt like me interfacing with like 20 volunteers is impossible. So what I try to do is to create hierarchy, which I didn't like because I thought, hierarchy is like, I would say people don't feel equal and all that. But I feel like, to make things efficient, I really need to create another layer where there are leads, there are people who are in charge of a smaller group and all that. Yeah. So what do you think? Anyone want to comment?
So the way I did it was my hierarchy. It's kind of like a special division itself. So it's more like you are just purely your task is to project manage. Doesn't mean you're above them, but that is your task and your KPI. So I guess it's kind of like equal. Some people's KPI is like doing tasks, while your KPI is just like managing things and making sure things are working well and smoothly. Yeah, that's how I accepted it.
Yeah, so you're like empowering these people, right?
Actually,
yeah.
Sorry, could I ask also, because I had this problem too, but I did something quite interesting. I had 2 developers to help me because I was only one, so I needed like 2 more to help me code my Telegram bot. What I ended up pitching to them my entire idea and vision like they were an investor, because I had a lot of issues like what you mentioned. Is this very common apparently. So after I started pitching to them, and then they were like, after a while they sort of understood what I wanted to do. So it's like, because I gave them like a timeline, right? So after I pitched them, after a negotiation for 1-2 hours, they gave me feedback and they're like, hey bro, this timeline I actually can go shorter or can go longer, this part. So I think after I share my vision with them, it make things easier for me lah. Just sharing.
So you need to sell your vision, right? Yeah.
Yeah, make them motivated also lah.
I think in my conversation, the Makan for Hope Festival, the conversation, what comes up a lot is talking about the North Star. So how it's really important to establish that and also to communicate that, and sometimes again and again to your team. Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to?
Yeah, I'll just kind of like jump in here, right? Because we actually modeled our firm after Wavemaker, right? So as you probably understand, Wavemaker, what they do is they have a US office and they have a Singapore office, right? So they're dual headquartered. We are sort of modeling after them. So basically I'm the managing partner here. I have a managing partner in New York, and I also have a partner based in the UK, right? So I guess like a lot of people were saying, right, it's about building that trust and relationship down the road, right? As we progress, and of course, right, very much I would like to think of it as institutionalizing the entire process, the investment process. So you kind of like go through this checklist, like, hey, does this company have A, B, C, D, E? If yes, how would we rate it? Right? Is it a 5 out of 5 or 1 out of 5? Probably Elise, your colleagues on the investment side will probably know this better than me, because we're still building this, right? Entire process down the road. But I guess it's about building systems, right? And then after that, getting everyone to commit to the same system, right? Of course, the culture part, like a lot of you say, I think I don't want to rehash that as well. But I think systems are very important, right? Which is why I guess a lot of VCs are kind of like very institutionalized, where everything is like, okay, a checklist, an investment committee meeting, a negotiation with a term sheet, and then wiring money, right? So I think it's kind of like we're still building up that process along the way, right? So fingers crossed, especially when the institutional fund comes up, things will be ready, and then after that we can kind of like go through that together with some of you guys down the road.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned about system and process, because you also reminded me that when I work with volunteers and also maybe people who are coming in to help and then going off, it was so important for me to write down the process in the document, and then having people to add to it and just share. Yeah, so I think that was very essential, and it's very counterintuitive when you're running a startup, because with startup we would think that, oh, we are very action oriented, we need to like do, right? But the key is actually to create system, to have some structure, so that you'll be able to handle the kind of I don't know, like things throwing at you all the time, right? Unexpected situations. Yeah, I find that really helpful. Anyway, Andrew just joined us. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, sorry, I'm so late. I just ended the meeting, but I wanted to come and say hi and observe and join everyone. TGIF, yeah, please keep going.
I just told everybody that how your wedding ring was made.
Sorry again?
I told everyone how your wedding ring came about.
Oh, yes.
First, Lydia is here.
I'm just the supporting role.
Yeah, Lydia got to know Jeremy also, and I think it's great. But if anyone is looking to get jewelry for Christmas, please contact Lydia. She has a very good selection.
Thank you. We are just discussing the topic about managing remote teams. Yeah, so I was going to invite Achu, because you're in the area of recruitment, right? I guess. Yeah. So,
that is correct.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elise. I think I've been pretty fortunate in driving remote adoption at Stripe. So I had a lot of information and wealth of knowledge which I could share. First and foremost, what we realized was there are 3 important parameters where things will typically break. One is sort of lack of information. Another one is more about setting rules of engagement. And the third one is more about, hey, how do I typically engage with other people internally in the organization, right? So, so what we did with lack of information was, even at Kula today, we typically do a lot of async communication and having it pretty well documented, whether it is talking to a user, understanding their notions in terms of whether they'll buy the product or not, sharing that across the team, irrespective of whatever role they are functioning, is critical. And number two, how do we typically make decisions? What happens if then what cases is very important. And then more about, okay, let's say if you're getting bored, what do you do next, right? How do you typically, who do you typically go and engage with? If you get stuck somewhere, who will be able to block you, unblock you, and whatnot, right? So that's pretty much what we focused on in terms of driving adoption for the flow of information. We typically use tools like Confluence and whatnot. Every single thing is documented, and so that as a founder, you don't have to spend more time on walking through every single instances in the organization. Everyone has spent some time. We're also trying to sort of make it much more video content rather than having them go through the documentation, right? So that's one. In terms of rules of engagement, we basically have owners for every single decision making inside the organization, in terms of, hey, who takes care of external facing communications, who takes care of internal communications, who does what. It is pretty well documented. And we also have a practice called as 515s, where every Monday we typically come and spend 15 minutes, and this is on Slack. And we talk about, hey, what is that we're going to focus on this week, and where do I need help? Nothing crazy, not many documentation. It's pretty simple, normal language. You just put your heart out and write what you're going to work on and what you're trying to accomplish this week and what is your blockers, and see if anyone from your team can potentially help you out, right? So that's been working very well. And the third one is more about how do we engage everyone inside the organization, right? We used a couple of tools, like probably I can share your tool, which has been working pretty well for us. It's called as Copy, where instead of you breaking your head and figuring out, asking questions to people about, hey, what movie do you like? What is the best, what's your thoughts on Squid Game, right? Which character do you like? And whatnot. Typically, there is a well, curated list of icebreaker questions available in this particular tool. It's a direct Slack integration. You basically set limits on, hey, how frequently do I want to, reach out to my employees, and then you typically have that conversation going on from there. So someone will say, hey, I like pizza with pineapple, and someone will basically say no to that, right? So getting to know each other in a different format is pretty helpful. Thereby decision making and the general flow within the organization goes pretty well. So those are my learnings. I won't say that we've been doing great. There is, of course, a lot of bottlenecks in the process. I have one of my employees in Berlin. We have 2 people in India. We have 6 employees here in Singapore. So, moving, one of the challenges you see is finding time between all the 3 people, irrespective of the region. It's becoming a bit tricky. So we take turns in terms of making sure that we have more one-on-one discussions with each of them. So that's my learnings.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So the question that we were discussing is about managing remote teams. So before, we're going to end soon, but before I end, is there anyone who wants to share something? Either best practices, thoughts, problems.
Yeah, maybe I can just go since some like last year.
Sure.
Yeah, so actually I do have a remote team, and it was very, very remote because one person is in Germany, one person is in Italy, and then one other person is in Singapore. So I've only had a remote team. It started remote, and I think it's been almost a year now, and we're still remote. In fact, we're coming together actually. And I think the main difficulties is the bonding experience. Honestly, it's not the same. Working on Zoom, the Zoom fatigue, and kind of being on Zoom, you don't bond as much as when I'm with a team here and I'm working side by side. When you want to take a break and you just chat, it kind of gets your mind away and kind of reset. But on Zoom, there's this constant pressure to you're only talking about this. Like people also don't want to stay on Zoom that much. I think that is the biggest problem. So yeah. Zoom fatigue.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I'm gonna thanks everyone for sharing. I'm gonna end the recording now, and then